Some people think courtrooms are made for justice, but sometimes they reveal something deeper, what guilt really looks like. Marcus Lane was 27 years old, tall, athletic, the kind of man people described as promising, a former high school football star who once had a scholarship, a fiancé, and a future, charismatic, confident, the kind of guy who could turn a crowd of strangers into friends. But on one cold February night, all of that changed. It started like any other Friday. Marcus had just finished a long week on a construction site. His buddies invited him out for drinks, said he deserved to blow off some steam. One drink turned into three. Three turned into shots. And by the time he stumbled out into the icy air, he swore he was fine to drive. He always said that. I'm fine. Minutes later, as he sped down Maple Avenue, a red light flashed in front of him. He didn't even see it. All anyone heard was a thunder of metal, glass, and screams colliding in the night. 2 lives, a young married couple on their way home from visiting family, ended instantly. Their car folded in on itself like paper. When police arrived, Marcus didn't run. He didn't beg. He just stood there, motionless, staring at the wreckage under the streetlight. Steam rose from the crushed hoods. The smell of gasoline filled the air. And as the officers approached, their flashlights landing on the blood streaks across his jacket, Marcus whispered, almost to himself, "It wasn't supposed to end like this." The officer who cuffed him said later, that line still haunts him, because in that moment, Marcus didn't sound like a killer. He sounded like a man watching his entire life burn right in front of him. By the time the trial began, the town was already divided. Half saw Marcus Lane as a murderer. The other half saw him as a man who made one tragic mistake. But everyone showed up to see how far he'd fall. The courthouse was packed. Local reporters filled the aisles. Old classmates from his football days whispered in disbelief. Even his former coach sat in the back row, head down, hands clasped. The prosecutor wasted no time. She pointed to the screen, the crash footage looping again and again. The sound of impact made the entire courtroom flinch. She said, "This was an accident. This was a choice. He chose to drink. He chose to drive. And 2 innocent people paid the price." Then she turned toward the victim's family, the mother and father of the young woman who died. They sat holding hands, a framed photo of their daughter resting on their laps. The father hadn't said a word all week, but when that footage played, he broke. A soft sob echoed through the room, sharp enough to pierce through the silence. Marcus didn't lift his head. Not once. His defense attorney, a weary public defender, tried to tell a different story. He spoke about Marcus's clean record, his volunteer work, the way he used to help at local youth camps. He said, "Marcus Lane is not a monster. He's a man who made a terrible mistake, one he'll regret for the rest of his life." But the photos were brutal. The twisted metal, the blood on the dashboard, the young couple's wedding rings, recovered from the scene. And the jury saw everything. Every time the evidence replayed, Marcus seemed to shrink further into himself. His once broad shoulders slumped. His hands trembled under the defense table. He didn't speak, didn't cry, didn't look at anyone. By the time sentencing day arrived, the courtroom felt heavy, like everyone could sense what was coming. People filled every seat, whispering, waiting. The victims' families clutched each other's hands. Reporters adjusted their cameras. And Marcus Lane, the man everyone once called Golden Boy, walked in wearing shackles and an orange jumpsuit. He sat down, head low, expression unreadable. Then the judge entered, stern, exhausted, emotionless. She opened her folder, cleared her throat, and began to read the sentence aloud. And that's when everything changed. You could feel it, the weight of finality in that room. The air didn't move. No one whispered. No one dared. Every eye was locked on one man, Marcus Lane. He sat still, wrist chained, eyes empty. The fluorescent lights above buzzed faintly, reflecting off the polished wood of the defense table. Across from him, the victims' families waited, hands trembling, faces pale. The mother of one of the victims clutched a silver cross so tightly, her knuckles turned white. Then the judge spoke. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't have to. It carried the authority of the law and the sorrow of someone who'd seen far too many lives destroyed by one reckless night. Mr. Lane, 2 people are dead. 2 families are forever changed. This court finds you guilty of vehicular manslaughter. You are hereby sentenced to 25 years in state prison. Marcus didn't move. He blinked once, twice, as if the words hadn't landed. His lawyer placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. No response. Then it happened. He laughed. Not a loud, arrogant laugh, not defiance. It was sharp, awkward, and almost painful. A fractured sound that cut through the room like broken glass. The prosecutor turned, eyes wide. The bailiff took a step forward. Even the judge froze mid-sentence, disbelief flickering across her face. And the victim's mother, she looked horrified, her lips parted, her eyes filling with fresh tears. How could he laugh? But then the sound changed. Marcus's shoulders started to shake. The laughter faltered, breaking into short, gasping breaths. Then came the sobs. Deep, raw, uncontrollable. He fell forward onto the table, the chains rattling as his body gave way. The bailiff rushed to steady him, but Marcus couldn't stop. He pressed his hands to his face, his words coming out between sobs. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to laugh. I didn't know what else to do. For months, he'd worn a mask, stone-faced, emotionless. Everyone thought he didn't care. But the truth was simpler and sadder. He'd been holding everything inside, the guilt, the fear, the shame, until that single moment broke him. The laugh wasn't joy. It was the sound of a man's mind collapsing under the weight of what he'd done. And as the courtroom watched, the golden boy they once cheered for, the one who never showed weakness, finally shattered. And in that moment, for the first time, Marcus Lane didn't look like a killer. He just looked human. No one moved for nearly a full minute. Not the judge, not the attorneys, not even the cameras. It was as if time itself had frozen, watching a man finally crumble under the weight of his own truth. Marcus sat on the floor beside the defense table, his orange jumpsuit wrinkled, wrists still cuffed. Tears streaked down his face, falling onto the cold tile below. His chest heaved with every breath, the sound raw, uncontrolled. Then, quietly, a chair scraped. Everyone turned. The victim's father was standing, a tall man in his 50s, broad-shouldered, wearing a simple gray suit that suddenly looked much too heavy for him. He walked down the aisle slowly, each step echoing against the marble floor. Every movement made the air in the courtroom grow tighter. The bailiff instinctively stepped forward. The judge lifted a hand, but didn't stop him. He stopped just a few feet away from Marcus, close enough to reach out, close enough to see the man who had destroyed his world. Marcus lifted his head, trembling, eyes bloodshot and empty. For a long moment, they just stared at each other. 2 men whose lives had collided in the worst possible way. You could hear someone sniffle in the gallery. Even the court reporter had stopped typing. Then the father spoke, voice low, shaking, but steady enough to carry through the silence. You took my family from me. A pause. His throat catches, but he continues. For months, I've looked at you and felt nothing but hate. But today, I see you. I see the man who did it. Not the mask. Not the headlines. Just you. Marcus's lip quivered. He tried to speak, but his voice broke before a single word came out. The father looked down, his hands trembling, then back up, eyes glistening. I don't forgive you. Not yet. But I believe one day you might find a way to make this right. And when that day comes, I hope you do. Marcus nodded slowly, just once, like a child being told the truth for the first time. No excuses, no defense, just silence. The father turned and walked away, his steps slow, deliberate. No one clapped, no one spoke. But somehow the room felt lighter, because for the first time in months, grief and guilt had shared the same space, and neither one ran away. In a place built for punishment, that day, something else appeared. Not forgiveness, not peace, but understanding. They say people show who they truly are when they lose everything. And in that courtroom, Marcus Lane lost it all, his freedom, his pride, and the illusion that he was still in control. For months, Marcus sat in silence inside his cell. No crowd, no cameras, no noise. Just 4 gray walls and the sound of his own thoughts. He used to replay the night of the crash in his mind, trying to edit it, trying to change it. But no matter how many times he rewound it, the ending was always the same. He didn't walk out a free man that day. But something inside him finally broke free. The guilt he'd buried. The denial he'd worn like armor. And for the first time, Marcus started writing. Letters he never thought anyone would read. Months later, a letter arrived at the courthouse, addressed to the very judge who'd sentenced him. That day I laughed. It wasn't because I didn't care. It was because I didn't know how else to face what I'd done. I was afraid to feel, afraid to see the faces of the people I'd hurt. But I see them now, every day, and I carry them with me, not as ghosts, but as a reason to change. The judge kept that letter, folded it neatly, and placed it in her desk drawer, beside a small photo of her own son, who died in a drunk driving accident years before she took the bench. Some verdicts don't end in freedom. Some end in awakening. And for Marcus Lane, that day wasn't just a sentence. It was the start of a reckoning.